Hello, and welcome to the Influence and Growth Mastery podcast. Today, I have Heather Cox with me. She is a tireless advocate for diversity. She's a business executive, a seminar director, a public speaker, and a marketer whose business venture is helping to make the business world more closely resemble the real world. I'm going to read Heather's bio because she is a phenomenal young lady, and I want you to hear all that you can hear about her before we get into today's interview. So Heather co-founded Certify My Company, which I think is interesting in itself, and I can't wait to hear about it. But after her own frustrating exposure to WBE certification process, which opened her eyes to the challenges facing small, diverse businesses. While networking with other businesswomen, she and her co-founder discovered a need for expert guidance in this area, and the company was born. So exciting. As the president of CMC, Heather works with both diverse businesses and corporations. She assists diverse businesses with all aspects of certification, helps to increase their visibility in supplier markets, and connects certified businesses with the corporations eager to do businesses with them. Heather educates corporations about diverse practices and collaborates with managers of supplier diversity programs to help them reach their diversity goals, including a covenant seat at the $1 billion roundtable. So impressive, Heather. Heather enjoys being a corporate matchmaker, facilitating relationships and sharing the knowledge through networking events and seminars. She's an accomplished sales and operations executive with over a decade of experience, primarily with small to mid-sized businesses, a natural teacher and thought leader, and a motivating presence on the stage. Heather's passion for supporting diversity in business extends beyond her roles at CMC. She currently serves on the national and regional forums of Women's Business Enterprise Council and has held past posts with Women's President Educational Organization, National Council, the National Association of Women Business Owners, and listen to this one, the advisory board of Super Bowl. And I had to Google this, Heather, 48, number 48. Away from her many professional pursuits, Heather enjoys not only relaxing with her husband and 5 small children.
I think this is not relaxing.
It's not relaxing. Yes. Yes, she enjoys not relaxing. Okay, I get that. I do get that. Not relaxing with her husband and small 5 children. This former acro gymnast, tightrope walker, and juggler, I am so impressed, knows just how to balance her hectic life with yoga, DIY projects, and baking. I'm just so impressed. A seasoned traveler and student of the world, Heather earned her BA in Spanish language from the University of Texas at Austin, and still remembers, she says, some of it. Heather, it is so exciting to have you. You are my tribe. You are my kind of people, or I'm your kind of people. Yeah. Yes, we are like-minded people. You know, I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. This is going to be fun. And actually, I need to update that bio because I was also the certification consultant for the Super Bowl this year when it was in Vegas. So that was very exciting. Yeah. So every year, the Super Bowl, they have a host committee, which makes sure that the local economies are utilizing diverse businesses. But they finally, after years of me pounding them, have made it sure that it had to be certified diverse businesses. So we were the certification consultant this year, which was really exciting.
That is very exciting. And I love when, again, as I told you before we started, and those of you didn't get to hear our conversation before we started, Heather, the way Heather started, and we'll talk about that, but certifications. I have gone through a few certifications myself, and we worked on certifications whenever I was back in my corporate role. So, again, we're so like-minded. And so therefore so excited to have you here to share your journey, especially after, your frustration with that certification process, which, did open your eyes to all of those challenges with the small, diverse, challenges that businesses face today.
Yeah, we all face as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, we do. So share with my people, our like-minded individuals who are considering entrepreneurship, exactly how it starts or how you got started.
With this whole crazy thing of running a business. I know. So it was really funny. You were mentioning earlier that you really kind of got started with networking and talking to people and interviewing people. And that's really how Certify My Company got started, is that when I was pregnant with baby number 1, and she just turned 16 a couple of weeks ago.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I knew I had to work. I knew that I was not going to get to be a stay-at-home mom, which I had envisioned. Right. But I knew I had to work. I didn't know what that was going to look like. And so I was really just interviewing every single working woman that I had enough of a relationship with to be like, hey, so let me ask you questions about your life. And so whether they were entrepreneurs or business executives, part-time, full-time, whatever it was, consultants, I just wanted to know what that looked like for them. Because, like when you haven't done something yet, when you don't have kids and working, or if you haven't run a marathon, whatever it is, if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, I like to ask people who have done it. And I am very aware that you can't always explain everything, right? So, but I asked them, and I just found the business owners just like intoxicating. There was something about them that I just wanted to keep having conversations with them. And then I found that the ones that were selling like business to business were really very exciting to me. And they had a passion and like an effervescence about what they were doing that I didn't see with some of the other ones. Right. And so even whether it was a consumer product or a service, whatever it was, there was just something about the way they talked about their businesses that was very exciting to me. And so, but as I asked them more questions, some of them would be like, oh, my client wants me to get this certification to prove I'm a woman. Right. And I just can't do it. And I was thinking, you run a business. What do you mean you can't do an application? Like, I just couldn't understand how, like, it just didn't make sense to me. So I went home. I did a little research about like what it entails, which was not easy to find, by the way, even just knowing what goes into it. And then my husband's an attorney. So I said to him, hey, what is a certificate of incorporation? And he said, well, in some states. And I'm like, oh, not in every state, which means that if I'm in a state where it's not called a certificate of incorporation and I'm like trying to figure out where mine is, I'm going to be very frustrated and I'm probably going to give up, because this is even before I understood the bandwidth constraints of running a business and having a family and community, commitments and everything else. And I said to some of these women, I'm like, oh, I can do that for you. I had zero idea what I was doing. No idea what I was getting myself into. Very little in the process, the quirks, the idiosyncrasies of it. But then this one told that one and that one told that one, and Certify My Company was born. And then quickly someone said, can you do the minority certification? Can you do the LGBT certification? And it just kind of organically snowballed into us being doing all these different certifications. And then I want to say it was like maybe 3 or 4 years later, I was introduced as an expert. And I had just read an article about this guy who they asked him, how did you become an expert? And he said, I started calling myself an expert. So I'm thinking, if he can just self-proclaim it and someone else is calling me that, I'm doing it too now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So Heather, that is all, great information and exciting. And you're exactly right. Let's talk about, when you're talking about the certifications, I want to clarify one thing here.
Okay.
So when you talk about getting all of those for, the corporations and all of the various different types of businesses.
Yeah.
Are you speaking about getting those business started, or are you talking about the education around the business topic so that they can become an expert? I want to clarify that first.
Well, I'm talking more about the various diversity certifications that an entrepreneur can get based on who they are, what makes them special, what makes them unique, right? So it could be that it's, a woman-owned business. Most people know about the women-owned business enterprises and the minority business enterprises, but there's more than just those two demographics. There's the LGBT business enterprises, there's the veteran business enterprises, service disabled veteran, and then the disability-owned business enterprises. And they all have a unique role in the supplier diversity ecosystem.
Yes. Very good. Very good. I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out because I wanted to make sure that that was extremely clear here. So talk about, as you started, looking into this business, you had the frustration, you identified the need, you started your networking process. You said you started asking all these people all these questions. And I get you when you say you start having these conversations. And it's so wonderful when you hear the tone of voice that people are talking from when they love what they do. And then they start giving you all of these ideas. Talk about the process and how that all evolved from your networking events.
Well, there wasn't even networking events in the beginning. It was really just any person that I could possibly find in my orbit that I just asked. I didn't even start going to real networking events until I'd started the business. I mean, I'd always done sales and whatever. And so I had been to networking events in the past, but it didn't even dawn on me to go to them until I had this business. And then there was conferences going on. And so I just went. And that was that kind of changed the trajectory, because once you start networking with people and you're in person, and then you can get different ideas and have conversations about what they need versus what you offer, and do you need to tweak your offerings based on their needs? And then so originally we were only doing business directly with the entrepreneurs themselves. They would hire us directly, and there was one other person out there who I considered a competitor. She has since then closed her doors. And when she did that, her corporate clients said to her, "We want you to find your replacement. We're going to trust you to do it." Wow. So she reached out to like 5 or 6 of us. That there's not other people who say they do what we do. I don't call them competitors. They say they do what we do. And she chose us. She said, "There's no one better. I wouldn't trust my clients with anybody else if I'm going to hand them over." And so once you get 1 or 2 corporate clients, then they go, "Oh, so now you're legit. Like they trust you. Now we'll trust you." Right. Mm-hmm. And so we started saying, "Oh, we work with this corporation and that corporation." And that really kind of changed the business, the way we were doing it. So now we still work directly with entrepreneurs. About 45%, 30% of the business is directly with entrepreneurs. And the rest of them are directly with the Fortune 100, Fortune 1000, different organizations that understand supplier development, the value of it, and want to offer our services as a value add to either their suppliers, their members, whatever it is, our clients. Even some of our corporate clients actually help their clients do this. So they'll support them through the certification process by using us.
Mm-hmm. So that's phenomenal. It brings me back to when I first started my business, and I started working with financial institutions first.
Yep.
And when they hear you're out there and you're doing what you're doing, just like your prior competitor, she knew how good you were.
Yeah.
And then she started, for her to recommend you to someone else. And then, for the business owners or the corporations to find out how good you are, they became to know, like, and trust you.
Yes, exactly.
And then to be able to refer you to multiple other corporations. I mean, that's just how it multiplies from there.
That's exactly how it happens, is that, they all trust each other because they're in the same, it's just like entrepreneurs are going to trust each other more than someone else because we get each other. We've all been through the struggles, the ups and downs, where you forget this. And then 2 minutes later, you're like, "I love this." And then 2 minutes later, you're like, "Forget this." Right. So, corporate representatives have the same struggles. And so they will really understand and appreciate each other's recommendations.
Yeah. Cause I remember, being in the situation from, the corporate entity situation where, you would call one and ask, well, who would you recommend who does X?
Yes.
And then they would recommend that particular individual. And you start working with that individual. Well, Heather, who do you know that does so-and-so? Well, then that gives you the opportunity to then start recommending,
we love doing that.
Oh, absolutely. And I do that all the time too. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the best ways to do business.
We talk about it so we have a program called Diversity Mastermind. So once you're certified, you have to know how to use this powerful tool. Mm-hmm. So we created a program called Diversity Masterminds, which does exactly that. And we have a section, which is we kind of talk about being a go-giver, which is most of us have read the book about being a go-giver. But what that does is when someone asks you, oh, can you do this? Or do you know someone who does this? And you get zero quote unquote benefit from it, it puts you in a position to them that they trust you to recommend. So people will say to me, oh, Heather, do you do X, Y, Z? And I say, we don't do this, but here's who I recommend that I have found does this exceptionally well. Let me make an email introduction for you. Maybe I have an agreement with them. Maybe I don't, whatever it is. But in their eyes, I didn't just dismiss what they needed because it doesn't benefit me directly. I said to them, you're so important. We're in a relationship together. Your needs are important to me. Let me see if I can find this person. Maybe I know off the top of my head. Maybe I don't. But how can I make sure that I'm still always top of mind to you when you need something? So if I am the solution, I'm still the first person they're coming to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and I mean, and that just puts you up on a pedestal. Let me get that word out. Up on a pedestal a little bit higher with that individual.
Right.
Because of what you just did.
Right.
So yeah, that's phenomenal. So in your journey, let's talk about challenges for just a minute. In your journey, what challenges have you seen for women and minority owned businesses trying to navigate that supplier diversity and how you've helped them overcome some of these barriers?
Well, I'm going to extend that to all the diverse demographics, right? Women, ethnic minority, LGBT, veteran, disability owned businesses, because we all face similar challenges, right? I would say some of the biggest challenges are access to capital, right? We all have that issue when we're trying to grow, especially if you're a product company that needs, or like a software company that has a lot of investments or money that goes up front before you actually do the work, right? You have to put out the money. That's a big one. Also, just getting in the door, right? So often just getting the opportunity to tell them what you do is a challenge. I can't tell you how many times, and I tell people this story all the time, and all the entrepreneurs are like, oh yeah, where you are, knock, 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 I want to do business with you. And they're like, we don't want any. And you're like, how do you know? If you give me 5 minutes, you are going to fall in love with me and realize I'm going to rock your world, and you're going to think whatever higher power you want that you got to meet me. Just give me a chance, right? And they just don't, because so often if somebody who's ever that decision maker is inside of an organization doesn't feel that what their current solution isn't broken, they often don't want to try something else. They just don't think it's broken. So why would they? Not realizing that their part misses. There maybe there's value that they're not getting, that they're missing out on it, right? And so what the diversity certification, supplier diversity does is it gives you like a side door, I like to call it, with a supplier diversity manager whose role within an organization is to find qualified, capable, certified, diverse suppliers to then introduce to their team members internally, right? So it's a way to get that opportunity to say, here's what I do. Here's why we're going to rock your world. Oh, and by the way, I'm women and disability owned certified. And so that's some of the biggest challenges. Also, the ebbs and flows of business in general definitely impact smaller businesses at a higher level. Some of these larger organizations, they kind of push back on the smaller businesses, and there's a power struggle sometimes. And so how can you really protect yourself from being bullied almost by some of these bigger companies? And again, having a supplier diversity advocate on your side can do exactly that.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that is so good. As you're talking, I think about the people who reach out to me.
Yeah.
And I say, I'm not interested, I'm not interested. And then you said, how do you know you're not interested?
Yeah.
And honestly, approach is everything, Heather.
I was just going to say, yes.
Approach is, you want to speak to that for a minute?
Well, I was going to say, I think some of the reasons, because I get that too. I get these emails, these LinkedIn messages. Okay. do not sell to me via LinkedIn message. It's not going to work, right?
It's not going to work with me either.
If you saw me on a podcast and you heard me say, oh, figuring out this AI is so frustrating. Now you can email me and say, wow, I heard you on this podcast say XYZ. I'd love to talk about how we can support that. Now I'm interested in hearing what you have to say, right?
Exactly.
It's the same thing with us. I'm not going to a random person saying, hey, you want to support your supply chain? No, usually I've seen you post that you want to be part of the $1 billion roundtable, or you're in a state that I know has state requirements. And that's oftentimes a struggle for a lot of organizations. And so that's when I'll reach out. You have to be smart, as you said, and you have to do it the right way. Just to be able to do it the right way to us. We're also procurement people in a sense, right? So they have to do it the right way to us as well.
Right. And that's what I tell people all the time, even on LinkedIn. Sometimes I'll have this back and forth conversation with people and I'm like, if you would have built a relationship with me first,
correct,
and then ask me, I would have considered it. So it's all about the approach. It's all about building that relationship. It's all about the ask. And so those are also so important. So talk about those people throughout your journey that have been, and it may have even been some of the people that have given you some of the information, some of the content, or some of the influencers that you met, but who has been extremely influential to you through your journey?
Well, my co-founder was a big part of it because, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. When I met these women, I happened to meet her and she was like, well, maybe this is a business opportunity. And she has another business. She's much more experienced in the business world. So that was a huge, influential orbit for me to be a part of because she knew a lot of the people and could make introductions. Now it's funny because she's like, well, the student has surpassed the teacher. And I'm like introducing her to people at this point. But, there's a lot of that, and also to find, as you mentioned earlier, your tribe. And so I'm a part of some industry organizations or some specific organizations where if I'm in need of an answer or support, I remember one time I had a procurement person, and procurement people, we love them, but they're not known for their soft touch. Okay. And so he was a bully, a straight up bully. He actually said the words to me, I question your integrity. And I almost lost it on him on the phone. I reached out to somebody who'd been in procurement for years. And I said, tell me, I'm not going to just roll over because I'm not wrong. I did nothing wrong. He just didn't like the answer. It wasn't wrong. Right. He just didn't like it. Right. So he said, well, you're going to have to eat. And it was like a bigger story, but he's like, you have to eat a little bit of crow. Here's what I would do. And to this day, this was before I even had the twins. This is 9 years ago. They're still a client of ours, this company, because I had somebody who was on my inner circle or my tribe that I could say, help me solve this problem. I also was one time at a WeBank conference, which is the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. And I'm a big fan of being the dumbest person in the room. I want everybody else that's there to be more experienced, smarter, no more people, because that's the only way to grow and to learn and to, to really get the most out of it. And I had just signed on with one of these large tech companies and they switched contacts. There was a new person, switch roles, which don't you love when they do that? And so now all of a sudden this person's like pushing back on the contract we signed on our hourly rate. And so I happened to be sitting next to somebody who I'd met, her name is Beverly White. And I was like, she saw my face kind of like get frustrated or that like crestfallen look. And she said, what happened? I told her and she said, I'm going to help you write this email right now. Because she'd been in business 20 years longer than me. She'd gone through this before. Why should I have to make a mistake I don't have to make? Right. So I love when these people are willing to mentor, even unofficially, right? She still checks in with me. How are things going? Just understanding there's people who want you to succeed, but you have to want other people to succeed, right? You have to be just as equally as much of a hype girl to them as they are to you, right? And you have to be authentic about it because people can smell out fake.
Right. Mm-hmm. I used to always say, Heather, I want to succeed, but I wanted my team members to succeed more than I wanted myself to succeed. Yeah. Because if I could be the catalyst that helped them, I would feel like I had succeeded. So, I totally understand what you're saying. So important in the bully. When somebody questions your integrity.
I was like,
That's like a knife in the heart. I mean, that's my number one core value.
Yeah. I mean,
in my
I would tell people have called me and been like, hey, look, can we make this work so it looks like my wife owns the company? And after I'm like, why don't you at least pretend to lie to me for like 2 minutes so we can have a conversation? No, I'm like, your money is not worth my reputation. We have a stellar reputation. People know if we're behind a company, they are 100% eligible for whatever they're going after. And so my integrity, my reputation, you can't get that back at all. Mm-mm. And it's and it's much harder to build it up than it is to bring it down.
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't take, but sometimes one thing that you do wrong in a corporation.
Yeah.
Specifically, I mean, an entrepreneur, yes, but when you do something like with you working with corporations, I mean, they're not going to recommend you. And then that spreads quickly.
Right. And I would say actually some of my best, I don't even want to say stories, comments, whatever you want to call them. So, we haven't always been perfect. We're humans also. And we had a corporation who engaged us to work with one of their suppliers, which is a whole different topic because I always tell people, you don't go on one date and be like, I'm never getting married, right? If it doesn't work out. You don't give me one supplier if it doesn't work out. But this one supplier was very difficult and it didn't end up finishing the process with them, right? Because they kind of ghosted us. There was issues, blah, 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 whatever. But they have still recommended us to other people, to other corporations, because they said the way they handled it, the way they communicated with us, the integrity behind us, we never felt like they were just taking us for a ride, right? Mm-hmm. We felt that they actually took one for the team more often because they take it. So it's so important to us that we uphold who we are. And so even people who have not had the most amazing romanticized experience with us will still refer us, which to me is almost a better testimonial than somebody who had a stellar, no problem, no bump experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It does. Well, that says a lot for you, your co-founder, your company, and those that you work with. So kudos to you for that. So that takes me right on into something else I was thinking about, and that's your growth mindset and how you help others grow. Because I know I saw on your website how you enjoy helping others increase their revenue. Yeah. So let's talk about cultivating growth, as in revenue, growth in mindset, growth in everything else. And how has that impacted your professional journey?
So you have to want to grow. There are definitely companies who are very happy not growing. And that is totally fine. If that is where you want to be, that's fine. I've had people say to me, I don't want to get certified. I don't want more clients. I'm like, oh, okay. What am I going to say to that? I'm like, okay. So, but there are people who do want to grow, and this diversity certification is one avenue as the caveat for growth. Now, everybody understands, or most people understand, the business development benefit of being a certified diverse supplier. What they don't always understand is the company and leadership development components of it. So there are scholarships to do executive MBA programs, right? Where they will cover the entire cost. Now you become a better business executive. You understand the finances, the marketing, all the components of running a business from Ivy League instructors who are oftentimes also entrepreneurs. Right. You also can do the leadership and the mentorship programs. Right. So in order to get the most out of a mentorship program, though, you do have to show a little bit of vulnerability or you're not going to get anything out of it. But I've taken part in a few mentorship programs. One of my favorites was the Toyota mentorship program. My mentor was the CIO of Toyota North America. Now she sits in that C-suite. And so I would say to her, hey, Holly, help me understand why these corporations are like, wow, Heather, you're amazing. Your company's amazing. I mean, we're not going to hire you, but you're fantastic. I'm like, what am I missing here? What is the verbiage gap? And she walked through with me because I said, I need to know what are what C-suite language am I not speaking here that is going to help them make this decision? And she worked with me on it. So but you have to go in knowing they're going to point out things that I'm not doing right. And you have to be okay with it or you can't fix it, right? If I would have been like, Holly, you don't know what you're talking about. She does, because she's the person that I would be talking to make that, right? Make that decision, to back my decision. So that's really what it comes down to, is knowing you want to do it, first of all. And then are there people that can help you get over those hurdles?
And when you say people to get you over those hurdles, one of the things that I thought of when you were saying that was you were asking the CIO what you needed to do differently. Sometimes people are shutting you down. Maybe you were talking to the CTO,
right?
And you needed to be talking to the CIO, and the CTO was like, "Oh, that's not a project I want to do." So he or she shuts it down before it ever gets to the CIO.
Right.
So do you have any strategies or thoughts behind that? I mean, I know kind of what I've done in the past, but do you have any thoughts around how people can handle that challenge?
Well, I think just first of all, knowing your industry, right? So our typical, if we're going above our supplier diversity manager contacts, which we don't always have to do, but it's the chief procurement officers for us, right? That's who we are trying to get to ultimately if we need to, or to educate them as to what their supplier diversity managers are, how they're rocking it in their position, because we want to make everybody look like a star. And so it's really knowing your industry. So sometimes we'll work with people in a consulting way and we'll say like, who's your ultimate decision maker? And they're like, well, I think I'm like, no, you need to know, because also if I'm going to say to the supplier, let's say I'm a marketing company and I want to talk to the chief marketing officer. Okay. If I don't know who that person is, it's very hard for them. There's 100,000 people in these companies, some of them 20,000, whatever it is. They don't all know each other, which I was always like, do you want me to introduce you to your colleague? Because I know both of you, even if you don't. But I'll say, who do you want to sell to? And they go, well, I think this. I'm like, no, you need to know. So when you go up to John Smith and you're like, hey, John Smith, this is what I do. Here's why I'm amazing and I'm going to rock your world. And I saw you have this issue happening. Here's how we can solve that for you. By the way, I'm a certified diverse owned business. I would love an introduction to, Tanya Jones, because that's your chief marketing officer and that's the audience. Now they can actually do something with that request. But if you're like, who should I talk to? Well, now they have to work, and you don't want to have to make people connect the dots because everyone has too many things to do. So if you can connect the dots for them, then that can overcome that challenge for you of who you need to talk to.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head too, when you said, I can help you. When you know without a shadow of a doubt, with confidence, that you're going to be able to solve a problem for them, and you tell them. And I think so many entrepreneurs today are shy. And are afraid to have the confidence behind their name or behind their business name to say, I know that I can get you the results. I know I can increase your revenue. I know
I can cut your costs. I can get you this goal, whatever. I think it's two sides. There's either those who are not good at that, not confident enough. And that's one of the biggest, one of the things that we love doing in diversity masterminds and throughout the Certify My Company process is, what's your differentiator? What's your value proposition? What makes you worth 5 cents more than anyone else who says they do what they do? And I'm going to tell you, pro tip, it's not customer service. Customer service is an expectation, not a benefit, right? The other problem is people who are overly confident. You cannot be everybody's savior. You can't be everything to everybody. So and don't overpromise, because you know what that does? It ruins it for everybody else. When you don't, when you overpromise, underdeliver, you ruin it for everybody else. And you make that supplier diversity manager look bad because they have to now kind of eat crow and be like, they told me they could do it. Like now to get another diverse supplier in the door is an uphill battle, right? So it's knowing what your core competencies are, knowing what you can do. And let's say, for example, you have done it, maybe just be transparent. We've done this a few times. It's not our expertise yet. We're working on it. I'd love you to work with it. Can we work on a deal where maybe it's lower than the typical hourly rate, right? But you get they don't have to pay for your learning curve then. Right. So not being underconfident, not being overconfident is I think are the two biggest challenges.
I've been in a contract before and people have asked me if I could do something like you're talking about. And I've said, I don't have the expertise, but I have the contacts that we can bring in to work with me and you on this particular deal.
Absolutely.
And when you're that transparent with people, they
trust you.
Are good with that. They trust you because when you have the, I always call it the Rolodex, going back to
I know.
the
I know. You said this young lady, or that's all I heard. I don't know if you've seen those Instagram reels where they're like, you're running from the cops and they're like athletic build. And you're like, all I heard is young. The entire intro, all I heard was young.
You look very young, Heather.
Thanks.
And I know that you are. So, but yeah, so, but yes, when you can say, I don't know, but I know how I can help you.
Yes.
You just elevated your integrity, your trust, your knowledge, your skill set. You just did all of those things with that particular individual in the room, whether it's procurement, it's human resources, it's an executive, whether
anybody.
It's a supplier. I mean, it doesn't matter. You just elevated yourself. And
absolutely.
It's
I've actually told people are always shocked because I'll say, you know what? I don't think this is a good use of your resources. And they're like, did you just tell me not to hire you? I'm like, I did actually, because I wouldn't want someone to do that to me. I never want someone, and it's happened before. And I was like, why would you tell me to buy that? That was $10,000 I didn't need to spend. But you told me I needed it, and then I did nothing with it. So I wasted $10,000, which could have gone toward my employees. It could have gone toward this, could have gone whatever it is. And so I am very transparent, and I'll say, you know what? I don't know if it is. Here's what I think you could do with the certification, right? So that is the first thing. We take a very consultative approach, which is something our competitors, people who say they do what we do, don't do. Like, we're very consultative in finding the right certifications for them based on their business and their goals and what they want to do and how they want to scale. Otherwise, you're just throwing spaghetti on the wall and hoping it sticks.
Yes. Oh my goodness. You bring something else to mind. Again, we're so like-minded that, I fired myself from a client just yesterday.
Oh, you have to sometimes.
Yeah. Well, just because of what you're talking about, I told him there was something that I recommended he do. And I said, I don't have the skill set. Let's go find somebody. So I gave him a task. Go find this particular individual. He did. They had a conversation. He came back. He played the audio for me. And when listening to it, I said, here's what we need to do. You need to fire me, and if you don't, I'm firing myself. As of today, this guy is charging you hundreds less than what I'm charging you per month. And he's from Argentina. So, and I said, when you're dealing with, foreigners basis versus US dollars. And I said, it just doesn't make sense for you to keep me on your payroll. It does not make sense. This guy can do what I'm doing plus this additional. Don't hire him. I'm firing myself. And so what you're talking about there is, again, it's elevating yourself.
Exactly.
And you are, you're helping other people grow. Number one, you're teaching them how they need to respond and act their business as they move forward as well. So what about networking? We've talked about this a couple of times. Are there any networking strategies that you feel like have significantly impacted your business or career that we should talk about today?
So there's a couple. So first is being you. Then when I started going networking events, I really had my mom in my head. You have to be this kind of person. You have to present yourself this way, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not, I don't fit into a square box. Like, I have a little bit of a wild personality. I'm very much of a jokester. I laugh a lot. I like to be silly with people. The supplier diversity space can get overly sensitive. So, we like to be jokey about stuff. And I'm not quiet, I'm not a wallflower. And so at first I was trying to be this very conservative, show up in a certain way. And it was really funny because then I went to this event. It was like an invitation only event. And I was in a safe space, if you will. And I was much more myself. And people were like, where'd this Heather come from? We like this Heather. This Heather's awesome. Right. And so I was like, wait a minute, I can be myself. And it really has changed. People now are like, oh, she's, she brings across an education, but she's fun and she's personable and she wants me to succeed, which if you're trying to be too reserved, that can be left out. Now, if you're a reserved person, that's your personality. It's not my personality. And so it's a matter of being who you are and showing up in a way that you can continually do so, right? The other one is somebody that speaking of mentors, people I look up to, a gentleman named Ron Vincent, who's supplier diversity manager at Bristol Myers Squibb. He said, he gave a talk one time and he said, new places, new faces. And so, what happens sometimes we get very comfortable and we go to the same places and we see this and we want to see our friends and we hug them and we're like, oh, how have you been? How are the kids? How is everything going on? But that doesn't expose us to new people who need us or to people we need. And so this year was one of my biggest goals, was to be new places, new faces. Where can I be? Whereas people who don't yet know my expertise, who don't yet know how amazing I am, let me show them. And so those are probably two of the biggest things is be yourself and then, throw in new places, new faces.
So let's move on into talking about learning from failures. Yeah. So, I just recently did an ebook called From Setback to Comeback. And so
good title.
Thinking about that from your perspective and your business, share some things that were maybe setbacks as you were building the business or throughout the business that you were able to come back from.
So first of all, I have a friend, her name's Pam Isom. She's a company called ICE Safety Solutions. And she does a talk called New Opportunities. She's like, when people tell you no, it's just a new opportunity for you, which I always keep in mind when I hear that, because, she's in her talk, she was talking about being adopted and she was told no by her birth parents and she had a new opportunity. And then she was, her birth parents were like half Black, half Hispanic, and her adopted parents are Asian. So she's like, I wasn't Asian, but I wasn't, so it was like all these new opportunities, but it all came from the word no. Right. Mm-hmm. So which I thought was such an interesting thing. So yeah, I would say some of the biggest failures or the comebacks are not outsourcing soon enough, right? Trying to do everything myself, which is a big fail. I would call it a failure that entrepreneurs do, is they don't outsource soon enough. They try to do too much themselves. The other thing is hiring. I was a terrible hirer. I was not good at hiring for a long time. We had a lot of turnover. And I was like, what am I missing? What am I doing wrong? I thought I had this process and I thought I had this whole thing down pat. And it really was, I just wasn't hiring the right people. I wasn't asking the right questions. Really leveraging your current team members. They know what you do. They know what it takes to be successful. And so now when I hire people, I'm the first interview, but I'm not the most important one. My team is the most important. I tell them, like, you can impress me, but if my team doesn't like you, you're not getting the job, because you are going to work with them day to day. And I'm doing the parts that I do, but they're the day-to-day interaction for you. They need to understand that you're going to be a good fit on the team. And we're a small team, which means every little personality is magnified when you're a small team. And then also understanding when I make mistakes and learning from them. So for example, I haven't read contracts 100% thoroughly, only to find out, oh, I have to do what now? I have to have what level of insurance? And so now you better believe I read every contract before I sign it for our corporate clients. And also just really understanding there are people you have to say no to. And I think that's also a big failure, that I wanted to say yes to everybody. I wanted everybody to hire us, and not every client is a good client. And so and so one thing I learned very early on is to be a protector, be mama bear for my team. And so when people are not nice to my team, oh, you better watch out. You think people are mean when they're at your kids? Oh, no, no. And so I would say those are kind of the comebacks. And why, again, we now have no one's been with me less than a year at this point. And we have a great retention rate, because we figured it out. And my most recent successful, not most successful hire, but higher level hire was I hired somebody who does body language consulting, which was fascinating because I just didn't want to have that turnover. They were they're the person who talks to my corporate clients. And I was so tired of saying that person left. And they're like, what is going on over there? Right. It's not a good look to have constant turnover. Right. And so it's, I hired somebody and it was funny watching them, because I remember there was 2 people in the final, and they said, I watched him interview both, and I was really thinking, oh, I know who's going to pick. And I was not right. He said, that person is not the right fit for you. That person is the best fit. And that person is still here a year and a half later.
Wow. So let me just ask you one last question.
Yeah.
And Heather, so you talk about supplier diversity in a box.
Yeah.
We used to have bank in a box, branch in a box, training in a box.
Yeah.
You have supplier diversity in a box. As we close today, I would love for you to tell me about supplier diversity in a box and then how people can locate you.
So Supplier Diversity Box has actually been rebranded to the Diversity Edge, and here's why. So how did Supplier Diversity Box come to be is that I had met somebody named David Ricciardi years ago when I lived in New Jersey. And every year we would see each other at multiple events. And I would say, David, tell me again what you do. And he'd be like, tell me again what you do. And we'd say, we should do something together. We have so many synergies. And then the next year and the next year. And finally, we were sitting there one year, it must have been like 6 years ago. And I was like, David, every year we say we should do something together. We need to make this happen because he has expertise that are synergistic to my expertise. And we said, what's the biggest, like, where is the challenge in this world? And we identified that the mid-sized businesses, meaning like a few hundred million to like 2 or 3 billion company, those are mid-sized businesses, don't have the same support for supplier diversity. And so we wanted to create an off-the-shelf supplier diversity program. So like, take it out of the box, it's ready to go. So that's what we created. We brought in one more partner to do that. Well, then last year we recognized that ESG, environmental, social governing, became a much bigger topic from Europe to the US, everywhere else. And so we wanted to bring in an additional expert. So we did. So we brought in a fourth JV partner. And so now we rebranded to the Diversity Edge because it's more than just an in-the-box program. But that's really what it is. It's multiple off-the-shelf programming and subject matter experts that you have available to you. And so, but again, that's another, it came through networking. It came through conversations and recognizing the greatness of others and where I'm not the expert in and how we can leverage each other's expertise. And so I think that's really why it's been so successful is because we all recognize each other's greatness and what they bring to the table in that JV.
I've just noticed that everything that's labeled in a box is phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's been my history. That has been my history.
Yeah.
So,
you're quite right. Yeah.
So it has been so phenomenal having you here. Tell us how people can locate you before we part today.
So we're at certifymycompany.com and keep an eye on that website because we are right in the middle of the very painful process of redoing our website. So it's going to be some exciting new pieces coming up there. We're also available all across social media at Certify My Co. And whether you're ready or not to get certified, whether you're certifiable or not, check out that because we do post events to go to, information, cool opportunities, whether it be like, the Macy's retail event, Target retail event, whatever it is. We have some great opportunities we post. Some RFPs come up, things like that. So reach out either through the website, certifymycompany.com, or at the social handles at Certify My Co.
And we will put all of that in the show notes. And for all of you that are listening today, thank you so much. Heather's got to run. And so we appreciate you. And I will see you on the next podcast. Bye.
Thank you.